Hey everybody, Chief here with OKS MTG, and I'm back with another video for you, and I'm starting a new segment. I think this is going to be really fun. We're going to go into keywords you thought you knew, and today's keyword of the day is ward. We're going to talk about how the mechanic works, what the keyword actually means, and maybe you'll learn something interesting about it that you didn't know before. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So first of all, I want to explain how ward works. From the comprehensive rules, ward is a triggered ability. It's a cost. That means whenever this permanent becomes the target of a spell or ability an opponent controls, you counter that spell or ability unless that player pays the cost. And additionally, some ward abilities include an X in their cost and state what the X is equal to. And this value is determined at the time of the ability resolves, not locked in as the ability triggers, which is important because it gives the opponent the chance to decide upon ward triggering if they want to pay that cost or not. And then the ruling states if a player casts a spell that targets multiple permanents their opponent controls with ward, each of those ward triggers separately. And if that player doesn't pay for all of them, the spell will be countered. And also if a spell or ability that can't be countered targets one or more permanents with ward, his controller may still choose to pay the ward cost. I don't know why they would, but nothing happens if they don't pay the cost, which is very important, and we'll go into why later. So first off, I want to show off some interesting cards with ward. I feel like WotC introduced ward as a way to kind of have a less absolute version of hexproof or shroud, and they went crazy with it for a while. So here's some interesting ones. Very recent from Final Fantasy, we got Ancient Adamantoise, who has Ward 3. This card's really powerful because until it dies, all damage that would be dealt to you and other permanents you control is dealt to this creature instead, and it has 20 toughness. And then when it dies, you exile it and make 10 tap treasure tokens. Also, damage is not removed from this creature during the cleanup steps. And that Ward 3 is a pretty hefty cost to pay. Next up, we got Ancient Imperiosaur. He's only got Ward 2, but this can be a very powerful card because the more you convoke it out, the bigger it gets. So it can be a massive threat once it's actually on the battlefield, and the Ward 2 means it's a little harder to get rid of. Next we got Abuelo Ancestral Echo, who's a great blink commander because you pay 1 and Azorius, and you can basically flicker one of your creatures or artifacts and return it at the next end step. He has Ward 2. Anna, the Sky Captain, has Ward discard a card, which is a pretty massive cost that the opponent would have to pay for Ward. And she's a powerful Voltron commander. Bronze Guardian has Ward 2, but the really big thing is he gives all other artifacts you control Ward 2, so that's a pretty massive amount of protection. Cactus Folk Sure Shot also has Ward 2, and he's just a great uncommon who gives all creatures you control with power 4 or greater trample and haste until end of turn. Captain Howler, his ward is 2 and pay 2 life. And the 2 life by itself isn't so much, but having to pay 2 mana and 2 life can really add up. So he's got a fair amount of protection. Codsworth gives commander creatures you control Ward 2. Giant Ankheg has Ward 2 and gives other creatures you control trample in Ward 2, so that's a pretty massive buff. Roaming Throne, one of the classics, just an amazing card who triggers on your creature typal synergies. He's got Ward 2, so he's a little hard to get rid of. Winged Boots is an interesting equipment because it gives the equipped creature flying and Ward 4. So it's not as good as your Swiftfoot Boots or your Lightning Greaves, but it's got the added benefit of giving the creature flying, and Ward 4 is a massive ward cost to pay. Neverwinter Hydra, it's a great creature. You can roll d6s and it enters with that many 1/1 counters equal to the result, and he's got Ward 4, which is pretty close to hexproof. Innkeeper's Talent is an interesting one because once you tap a green and pay to put it at level 2, it gives your permanents you control with counters on them Ward 1. So this can just be massive in any deck that's dealing with a lot of counter synergy. Voha is a pretty notorious commander just for having Ward 3, which is a lot to pay just to target this guy. And he's pretty known as a kill-on-sight commander. And then finally, probably the most interesting ward cost that I've seen is Sauron, the Dark Lord, whose ward cost is sacrifice in legendary artifact or legendary creature, which is pretty massive in a lot of decks where the only legendary creature is the commander. So Sauron can definitely be pretty hard to get rid of. But here's the interesting thing I'm going to talk to you about is how to get around ward. Any card that says this spell can't be countered gets around ward because ward is a form of countering. It counters the spell. So if it says this spell can't be countered, you can ignore ward, which we see on Slice from the Shadows. In the reminder text, it says this includes by the ward ability. So you can target somebody's creature no matter what the ward cost is and just ignore it.
Music licensing reimagined.
We've also got the Seiju, who shelters all, is a land that has the ability you can pay 2 life, add 1 to your mana pool, and if that mana is spent on an instant or sorcery, that spell can't be countered by spells or abilities, including ward. We got Rise of the Eldrazi, a huge spell for 12 mana, and it says this spell can't be countered. So you can destroy a target permanent even if it has ward, draw those 4 cards, take an extra turn. It's pretty awesome. There's also multiple red burn spells that say it can't be countered, so you got Combust, which will do 5 damage and gets around ward. Same with Exquisite Firecraft, deals 4 damage to a target creature or player. And it says if there are 2 or more instant or sorceries in your graveyard, it can't be countered by spells or abilities, including ward. Fry is another one, can't be countered, so it gets around ward. Inescapable Blaze, deals 6 damage to any target and can't be countered. Overmaster, the next instant or sorcery spell you cast this turn can't be countered. So you cast this sorcery, then you cast whatever you want targeting a creature with ward, and it cannot be countered. Mistrise Village was a really interesting land that came out in Dragonstorm Tarkir. You pay a blue and tap this land, and the next spell you cast this turn can't be countered, including ward cost. Raining Volley, just another burn spell that can't be countered by ward. And probably this is the best one that I found. Shamil the Ender Sun says, spells you control cannot be countered. This is basically the umbrella that says, ward, I don't care about that. You got a ward cost, I'm not paying it. I target your stuff, I can ignore all the wards. So yeah, Shamil the Ender Sun, great card. You probably play it more for its Discover 5 at every end-step ability, but that ability to get around all counter spells and all counter magic, including ward, is huge. So anyway, that's been the keyword of the day. I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed it. And this has been a lot of fun. If you like this video, please like, share, comment, subscribe, and I'll keep putting these out. And until the next time, y'all have a good one.